There is a moment, a specific and strange moment, that almost nobody talks about. It happens when you stop caring what someone thinks of you. Not in the aggressive way, not the way people perform, not caring while desperately hoping someone notices. The real version. The quiet version. The version where you say something honest in a room full of people and you feel absolutely nothing waiting for their reaction. No anxiety. No scanning of faces. No mental replay afterward. Just silence inside your own head. And the terrifying thing is that most people have never felt that silence. Not once. Because from the moment they were old enough to understand that other people had opinions about them, they began building their entire identity around managing those opinions. And that process never stopped. This is not a video about confidence. Confidence is surface level. This goes much deeper than that. This is about a neurological pattern so deeply embedded in the way your brain operates that most people mistake it for personality. They think needing approval is just who they are. They think the anxiety they feel before posting something, before speaking up in a meeting, before telling someone a truth they might not want to hear, is just normal. It is not normal. It is conditioning. And the difference between those two things is everything. The brain has a region called the anterior cingulate cortex. When you experience social rejection, this region activates in a pattern remarkably similar to physical pain. This is not metaphor. The neuroscience is literal. Your brain processes the experience of someone disapproving of you using the same neural machinery it uses to process a physical injury. Which means every time you post something and watch the numbers, every time you change your opinion because you felt the room shift, every time you swallow what you actually think and replace it with what you believe will be accepted, your brain is running a pain avoidance program. You are not being social. You are avoiding injury. And the brain, being extraordinarily efficient, gets very good at this very fast. Here is where it gets interesting. The same brain system that processes rejection also processes reward. When you receive approval, when someone validates you, agrees with you, laughs at your joke, likes your post, the brain releases dopamine. The same neurotransmitter involved in every major addiction known to neuroscience. What this means practically is that seeking approval is not a personality trait. It is a dopamine loop. You seek, you receive validation, you feel relief and reward, and then the relief fades and you need it again. This is the cycle. And like every dopamine-driven cycle, over time you need more of it to feel the same effect. The 5 likes that felt good at 20 feel like nothing at 30. So you work harder. You perform more. You shrink more. You calculate more. And all of it is the brain chasing a neurochemical hit that gets shorter and less satisfying every single time. But that is not the real problem. The real problem is what this loop does to your identity over decades. Think about who you were before you understood that people had opinions about you. Before you learned that certain things you said made adults uncomfortable. Before you discovered that certain versions of yourself were celebrated and other versions were met with silence or disapproval. There was a person there. An actual person with actual instincts, actual preferences, actual responses to the world. And then social conditioning began its work. It did not happen violently. It happened slowly, in the gentlest possible way. A parent's disapproving look. A classroom laugh at the wrong moment. A friend who went quiet after you shared something real. The brain registered all of it. Filed it. Built a model. The model said certain things are safe to express and certain things are not. And gradually, invisibly, you began living inside the model instead of inside yourself. This is where things get disturbing. By adulthood, most people have performed this self-editing process so many thousands of times that they have completely lost track of where the real self ends and the performed self begins. They will tell you they are an introvert when they are actually someone who learned that being extroverted attracted unwanted attention. They will tell you that they do not care about art or music or a particular kind of work when what they actually mean is that caring about those things was never safe. The approval-seeking rewired the self-concept. And now the prison is invisible because the prisoner has forgotten that walls exist. The neuroscience here is sobering. A 2012 study published in Psychological Science found that people who chronically suppress their authentic responses to manage social approval show measurably higher levels of cortisol, the body's primary stress hormone, even during neutral social situations. Their nervous system is permanently running a background threat detection program, scanning for signs of disapproval the way a soldier in hostile territory scans for movement. This is not anxiety as a temporary state. This is anxiety as an operating system. And then something changes. It does not always happen dramatically. Sometimes it happens because someone loses something they thought they could not survive losing, and then survive it anyway. Sometimes it happens through therapy or meditation or a single conversation that cracks something open. Sometimes it just happens because the exhaustion of performing finally outweighs the relief that the performance used to bring. But at some point, something shifts. The person stops, even briefly, running the calculation. They say the thing without editing it. They make the decision without polling the room. They let the disapproval land without rushing to fix it. And in that moment, something neurologically significant happens. The anterior cingulate cortex still activates. The rejection still registers. But the brain does not immediately route the signal into the behavioral correction loop. The person feels the discomfort without immediately acting to resolve it. And in that gap, something becomes visible that was never visible before. The disapproval does not actually kill anything. The relationship does not immediately end. The room does not collapse. The feared consequence, the one the brain had been organizing an entire life around avoiding, turns out to be survivable. And the brain, with enough repetition of this experience, begins to update the model. But here is the twist that most people are not prepared for. When you stop seeking approval, people notice. And some of them do not like it. The friends who were unconsciously depending on your performance, your agreeableness, your predictable willingness to be shaped by the room, they feel something has shifted and they cannot name it. Some relationships cool. Some people become subtly or not so subtly hostile. The social world, which rewarded your compliance for years, does not automatically celebrate your authenticity. This is one of the most disorienting parts of the process, the realization that some of the approval you were working so hard to maintain was never actually love or respect. It was comfort. It was the comfort of having someone in the room who would not challenge anything. And when that function disappears, so does a certain kind of relationship. This is where most people stop. They feel the social friction and interpret it as evidence that they were wrong to change. The brain, still wired toward pain avoidance, flags the cooling relationships as data. It says, look, the old way was safer. And many people walk back through that door and lock it behind them. But the people who stay with it, who tolerate the disorientation, who let some relationships fall away while building new ones with people who respond to the real version rather than the performed one, those people begin to experience something that is genuinely difficult to describe to someone who has not felt it. The internal noise quiets. The mental replay after conversation slows down and then almost stops. The decision-making process, which used to involve a complex calculation of how every option would be perceived by every relevant person, simplifies dramatically. Life gets quieter. And in that quiet, the brain begins doing something it has not done in years, possibly decades. It begins generating genuine preferences, genuine opinions, genuine responses to the world that come from the inside rather than from a reading of the room. Neuroscientists call this a shift in the locus of evaluation. The psychological term is internal locus of control. What it feels like, practically, is that you stop looking out the window to figure out what the weather is. You look at the sky. You trust what you see. And then you decide what to wear. The final thing, the thing that most people discover at the end of this process, is the most unexpected of all. They did not become cold. They did not become uncaring. They did not become the selfish, approval-indifferent person they always slightly feared they might become if they stopped managing what everyone thought of them. They became, in most accounts, more genuinely kind, more present in actual conversations, more capable of real honesty, which is the only foundation that real closeness can be built on. Because the care they used to spend on performance became available for actual connection. The approval you spend your life chasing is borrowed energy. It comes from outside and it leaves from outside and you have no control over it. The moment you stop needing it, you discover something that was always underneath. The person who existed before the first disapproving look, before the first learn in silence, before the brain built the model and mistook it for a self, that person never left. They just learned to wait.